Dear guests, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear friends, good afternoon. I'm Sonia Coupry. I'm the Science and Higher Education Attaché for the Embassy of France at the Institut Français. And on behalf of all the organizers, I would like to welcome you all this afternoon. And it is a great pleasure to open this event, this 2022 edition of the France Finlande Conference on Circular Economy. This event has been made possible thanks to a lot of persons, and I would like to thank all of them. More specifically, first, all our panelists and our moderator, as well as our key speaker, Matteo Poveni, who comes from France but already knows Finland quite well, as he was occupying my position previously. Well, thank you so much for all of you for being here today, and also thank you to the Finnish Innovation Fund Citra for their help and support in organizing this event, and for the EU representation to Finland for hosting us this afternoon. In order to begin the official opening remarks, I'm very pleased to introduce you to Her Excellency, Madame Agnès Cukierman, Ambassador of France to Finland.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Dear Mr. Patrick Tunen, Under Secretary of State of the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment, dear representative of the scientific community, of the civil society, and of the industry. I'm very pleased to welcome you today at the European Commission representation in Finland for this 2022 edition of the France Finlande Conference on Circular Economy. I'm also very glad that this event is co-organized, as in 2018, with the Franco-Finnish Fund for Innovation, which is one of the main Finnish actors in this domain. In March 2020, the European Commission adopted the new Circular Economy Action Plan. It is one of the main building blocks of the European Green Deal. The EU transition to a circular economy is aiming at reducing pressure on natural resources and creating sustainable growth and jobs. It is also a prerequisite to achieve the EU 2050 climate neutrality target and to halt biodiversity loss. In 2020, France shaped a system-wide transition towards circular economy with an ambitious anti-waste law that has introduced several measures that are a world first. First country to ban the destruction of unsold non-food products. Companies will now have to reuse, donate, or recycle their unsold products. First country to introduce a mandatory repairability index on electronic and electrics products to increase the proportion of products that get repaired. It leads manufacturers to consider repairability at the design stage and increases consumer awareness. The law also aims to stimulate societal transformation by creating new jobs and supporting the solidarity economy. This anti-waste law is quite successful, and France has been chosen by foreign investors to deploy their circular economy activities. For example, the American company Eastman will build the world's largest molecular plastics recycling plant in order to develop that circular economy side. Quebec-based Loop is partnering with Suez to develop plastic recycling projects, and IKEA, in French-speaking, I don't know, IKEA in Finnish, or English, announced an investment of over 650 million for circular economy and sustainable transport projects in France. France wants to become exemplary in this field with the ambition to recycle 100% of plastic by 2025, and the demand for recycling plastic has now become greater, which makes circular economy even more attractive. Finland also actively contributes to the dissemination of circular economy concept and has taken in 2021 the resolution to promote circular economy based on the vision that in 2035 the Finnish economy will be based on a carbon neutral circular economy society. I can attest that during my travel in the country I see a lot of strong actors both in the research and in the economic side that show big interest in that. So you are on time with this topic. Today it shows that interest because we have the chance of welcoming a very diverse and rich panel of experts who will share their expertise and experience with us and discuss how the circular economy can, should, or will take hold in all areas of our society. I would like to thank all our speakers who accepted to participate in this event. Thank you also for Citra for organizing this event with us. And finally, thank you to the European Commission representation in Finland for hosting us. I wish you all very fruitful discussions.
Thank you very much. Now I'm very glad to introduce you to Emma Kari, Finnish Minister of the Environment and Climate Change in Finland. Minister Kari was unfortunately not able to be with us this afternoon, but sent us a video.
Your Excellencies, dear friends, circular economy is the model of the future for Europe and for the world. There are many reasons why we need to make this shift. First, natural resources fuel our production and consumption. Globally, the use of natural resources has more than tripled over the past 50 years. It is time to change our production and consumption habits. Second, the green transition will trigger a new race for natural resources. Wind turbines, electric cars and hydrogen solutions require more materials and low-carbon electricity. Third, the use of natural resources has immense impacts. Half of the greenhouse gas emissions and more than 90% of biodiversity loss are caused by the consumption of natural resources. Last, the horrible Russian invasion of Ukraine has shown that we need to increase the self-sufficiency and reduce our dependence of global material flows. There is no single solution to respond to these challenges. Transition to a circular economy is not just about businesses, but we need to make a change in the whole society and the way we plan and design our policies, our cities and infrastructure. France has been a prime example of a forward-looking and innovative approach to creating legislation and markets for a more circular economy. For example, France has introduced a product footprint methodology and a repairability index for electronic devices. Both the EU Commission and we in other countries have been following this work very closely. In Finland, we have set a target to become carbon neutral by 2035. Last year, the government made a decision, I would say a historical decision, to curb the overconsumption of natural resources. Now we are in the process to make this happen. Ministries, businesses and cities together have started to make plans for a circular economy together with researchers. The outcome of this dialogue that is based on solid scientific work will eventually be concrete and effective measures and policy tools to create a positive circle and reach the sustainability targets. I wish you all a most successful event that will lead to many new ideas.
Well, I'm
now delighted to introduce you to Mr. Petri Pantonen, Under-Secretary of State at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment in Finland.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador, Minister on the screen, dear participants here locally, and I'm sure there's quite a number of you following the event online. Welcome to all. And let me first really join the thanks, especially towards the French Embassy here for organizing that event with CITRA, our sort of dear think tank, especially in the circularity domain. And in many ways, of course, this is more than topical theme. I know this is very strongly also in the French presidency agenda, so in that sense we're delighted to see that we have sort of a common thinking, shared objectives within Finland and France when it comes down to European policy making, and really seeing the opportunity of circular economy in a very broad sense as truly a European competitive advantage, really being able to pursue our ambitious climate sort of policies in Europe, Finland being really one of the forefront countries by aiming to reach carbon neutrality, as we know, by 2035. Europe following suit 15 years later in a broader sense. I think it's an area where circularity certainly has significant sort of opportunity. Well, I think I'll just sort of try to underline one specific Finnish sort of a dimension. First of all, of course, one can argue that Finland was, before the words circularity and bioeconomy were invented, I think we were basically doing that already. So in that sense, it comes reasonably naturally for Finland to sort of think along those lines. And again, from the Finnish perspective, or in many ways, our sort of a circularity thinking is based on renewable resources. Their smart, sustainable, sort of value-adding use, I think, is the Finnish model in particular when it comes down to circularity and, of course, especially on bio-based solutions. And I would like to also underline that even though bioeconomy is quite often sort of considered of you know, the northern countries, Finland, Sweden, and the other sort of forest countries are the bioeconomic countries, but that's not true. Actually, each and every European country certainly is a bioeconomy. It's very much also to do, let's take Portugal, for example, an oceans sort of a nation, and in that sense, truly very much in the circularity theme and bioeconomy theme there. We take Netherlands or many others. So in that sense, I think we should recognize both circularity and bioeconomy as really sort of important policy tools and opportunities to advance our climate objectives, for example, in these themes. So in that sense, I think it's something where we appreciate the French sort of presidency in that sense, that you've been pushing these agendas and really enabling them to become clearly European sort of policy solutions. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm certainly looking forward to joining the audience and really listening to the panel discussion, and especially our sort of a keynote presentations, really to share us new ideas, new inspiration, and of course looking at a lively debate on the great opportunity of circularity and especially the bio-based solutions there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pantonen. I'm now pleased to welcome Mathieu Leporini, who is researcher at the European Centre of Sustainability at the University of Clermont-Auvergne in France, and who will be presenting us his approach towards a circular society.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Bonjour. Hey, trying to do it. Madame l'Ambassadrice, Your Excellencies, dear Minister, online, Under Secretary of State, dear colleagues, dear friends. First, I would like to deeply thank Sonia Coupry, the Science and University Cooperation Attaché, the Embassy of France and the Institut Français in Helsinki, and all the teams from the Institute, the French Institute and the Embassy. Thank also CITRA for organizing this public event today, together with my research institution, so the Research Unit CNRS and Clermont University, CERDI, and the European Center of Excellence on Sustainability. It is also a great pleasure for me to be here today, like Sonia told, especially because I have spent many times working here. So it's again a great pleasure to come back and meet again with some Finnish friends and partners, especially after the many crises we are still going through. So for this keynote, I will say that for me, meeting the other, finding and creating space for dialogue so that we can understand and acknowledge their journey and expectations with an intention of cooperation to foster the process of innovation, co-creation, and to embark on a resilient path at all levels, in all systems, is at the core of my research and development activities. I'm coming from the climate science, and I'm doing now more social sciences, trying to bridge social and natural sciences. For this keynote, From a Circular Economy to a Circular Society, a holistic approach towards a resilient and sustainable economy, I would like to take a step back and try to share with you some global and holistic views that are, from my perspective, important. Not exhaustive, but important if we would like to change our paradigm on how we could make space for a resilient and sustainable society. I will first share with you some thoughts on the state of the world and our system thinking before introducing general circularity principles of our systems. We will then bring this to circular economy, trying to bridge holistic approaches with local, traditional, and indigenous knowledge. I will conclude on the topic of circular cooperation, that is, from my perspective, at the core of this paradigm shift and possible reshape of sustainable development. While great improvements in human health, knowledge, and material well-being have been happening since the 19th century, our world is facing more and more global challenges with rapidly increasing environmental degradation, multifaceted climate crisis, biodiversity loss and mass extinction, planets poisoning by toxic chemicals. All this highlighted by international scientific and expert communities, amongst them IPCC, IPBES, and UNEP. Enhancing human well-being to more equitably meet the needs of both current and future generations is still, after so many years and decades, an alarming concern in this period that many are now calling the Anthropocene, due to the dramatic human impact on nature. Indeed, the activities perpetrated by humans since the Industrial Revolution are pushing the planet outside of the range of variability and stability for many key Earth systems and planet boundaries. Of course, understanding what can be done today and tomorrow to collectively overcome these global challenges is important, but I feel that better understanding where we are and where we are coming from by observing our systems, ways of thinking, and worldviews may reveal complementary keys for our future. And this is the intention of this keynote. Nowadays, most of the people are experiencing living in a disconnected world, where we have, in a way, lost the meaning and the experience of linkage, relationship, and connection in multi-dimension. A conference at the French Académie des Sciences in 2020 was underlining that what is happening to us in our days is the poverty of ties. That is to say that we have lost, in a way, living together, living with nature. We feel today that we need fraternity, rediscovered communion, because happiness and well-being that we are all looking for cannot go without the otherness, and the otherness without the gift of yourself. All seems more and more fragmented, in silos, disconnected. In all sectors of our life, we are also observing a rising in power of mutual stereotypes and segmentations between the people who know and the people who doesn't know, which brings sometimes the principle of being superior, inferior, and the dominated perspective to life. At all levels, in all sectors, the consequences are often present. We are indeed experiencing an exhaustion of the vertical, hierarchical model and a crisis of social ties. Research and science have also resulted in very compartmented disciplines where trans, multi, interdisciplinary research, even if, of course, more and more active, is still not very well evaluated and funded, while we actually do live in complex and interconnected adaptive systems where it's hard to study a subject without considering all connected topics and their dynamics. Maurizio Iaccarino, the General Secretary of the UNESCO World Conference on Science in 2003, was saying that science is part of culture, and how science is done largely depends on the culture in which it is practiced. There is, in my opinion, a strong invitation and need of a culture and way of thinking shift towards holistic approaches and principles that can reconcile, rebuild links and relationships within our complex and interconnected systems, and in particular with the human beings and nature. He was also saying at the same conference, what we understand today as being modern science is in fact not that modern, but was born nearly half a millennium ago at the time of the Renaissance in Europe. But even if we think of great Renaissance thinkers such as Galilei, Leonardo da Vinci, or Sir Isaac Newton as the first true scientists, we should not forget that all civilizations throughout history have produced and accumulated knowledge to understand and explain the world, a process that was often accompanied or stimulated by technological development. Indeed, the explosion of knowledge during the Renaissance was sparked by a reawakened interest in the writings of the Greek, Roman, and Arab philosophers and scholars. Thus, it is interesting to see that since the Renaissance, Western modern thinking and science have mainly been driven by classical logic and determinism, dominant positivist reductionist paradigm and analysis. It seems important to me in this regard to speak about the complex thought developed by the French sociologist and philosopher Edgar Morin. Complex in the etymological sense of the term complexus, meaning creating the link, embracing, interconnecting, and which defines the systems, all the systems where we are living as complex, adaptive system, all interconnected. Since the Renaissance, and in particular with the influence of some Greek philosophers, including Aristotle, for instance, modern science has been based on the laws of thought, which have led to determinism. Since then, in Western science, it is accepted a priori that everything can be solved, can be determined, fully known, and in a way that all is linear, true or false, 0 or 1. This determinism has led to artificially fragmenting into disciplines what we observe and study by coming to study phenomena by silo, separately. Today, this is actually our whole societies, our organizations, which has adopted a fragmented logic, and we have been realizing for some time now that these fragmented logics do not allow the understanding of systems, even sometimes at a micro scale. Professor Burks from Canada, who is an international renowned scholar on traditional and ecological knowledge, was saying that Western scientific knowledge is characterized by disembeddedness, universalism, individualism, nature-culture and subject-object dichotomy, mobility, and some kind of instrumental attitude toward nature, nature as a community, as a commodity. But at the time of Aristotle, there were also other Greek philosophers like Plato, who issued the postulate that beyond the true and false determinism, there is actually an infinity of possibilities, like between 0 and 1, all the real numbers. And thus, they invite us to consider possibilities infinite than just one or the other one. From fragmentation to determinism, and sometimes nowadays to simplism, we are called to move to a holistic, systemic approach and to complexity. Professor Levin from Princeton University was sharing that the notion of complex adaptive systems has found expression in everything, from the cells to our societies, everywhere. Much of our understanding of complex adaptive systems come from the observations we are doing with nature. Today, we know that the scales of change are not so easily separable, and that the exact nature of those innovations cannot be predicted. Thus, the dynamics of the full system take place in a high-dimensional space whose axes are unknown. And because complex adaptive systems are systems in which microscopic interactions and evolutionary processes give rise, like in chaotic system, to macroscopic phenomena through nonlinear interactions, these systems are subject to path dependence, with implication for the likelihood of multiple stable states and chaotic dynamics. This is quite important then for me to understand the holism and complexity of our world to better understand any system. From there, we can observe what I have conceptualized as the circularity theory that can apply to any systems, from a city to a society or to an administration or an organization, which has one characteristic and three key principles. The characteristic of complexity and systemic property, the first principle of permanent movement through transformative cycles towards a complex equilibrium, the second principle of ongoing learning process, creating space for evolutive creation, innovation, discovery, and resilience, and the third principle of co-creation, cooperation, participatory approach, which is, for me, the circular cooperation. Professor Burks was underlining that nowadays we are discovering a universe that is dynamically alive, a whole system, fluid and interconnected. Science is like discovering a new version of the enchanted world that was part of the natural mind for most of human history. This view is a radical departure from the static, mechanical, disembodied view of the world formulated by Descartes, Newton, and other thinkers at the age of the Enlightenment, which has dominated our thinking. I do believe that in order to change the paradigm around sustainability, a cultural shift is necessary to be able to imagine and implement new and alternative futures. In that perspective, circular economy might be a strong ally if the complexity thought and circularity principles that apply to all systems are fully integrated into its definition and implementation. Over the past decade, circular economy has attracted attention from policymakers, practitioners, and researchers. It aims to interconnect the existing production-related strategies such as eco-design, responsible production, and responsible procurement, and product and service optimization strategies such as the sharing economy, maintenance and repair strategies, donating and reselling, performance economy, functionality, reuse and redistribution, refurbishing, biochemical extraction, recycling and composting, and energy recovery. On a more conceptual basis, circular economy is also being promoted and has attracted attention based on the assumption that it has the potential to decouple human well-being and economic growth from the impacts created on life-supporting systems through an optimal use of resources. And this is the challenge today of the paradigm shift on the topic of the circular economy. On this subject, it is interesting to look at the scientific studies that have looked at the barriers to the development of the circular economy over the past years. Some of the most recent studies show that beyond the barriers related to market, regulation, or technology that exist, it is actually today cultural barriers that are identified as the greatest obstacle, emphasizing moreover that the subject of circular economy, whose, by the way, definition is still quite different in the scientific literature and according to the different actors who are talking about it, is still like a niche subject of discussion for the multi-sectoral experts who work on it, from the local to the global, including at the political level. The circular economy must therefore, in a holistic and systemic approach, integrate all the dimensions of sustainability: economy, technology, environment, but also social, cultural, and governance, in order to increase the interest and commitment of all stakeholders and to propose scenarios in line with the expected results, including in terms of social acceptance, social justice, and behavior change. The circular economy must therefore integrate the principle of complexity and be deeply rooted in interdisciplinarity, intersectoriality, and interculturality. It does call for a qualitative and holistic approach, in addition, not in opposition, in addition to quantitative indicators associating with them, for example, the social, cultural, and political dimension that are important for Europe. Thus, the holistic approach of the circular economy must not only make us aware of the need to accept and integrate the complexity of the systems in implementations at all levels, micro, meso, macro, but also to further link it to the global challenges of sustainable development. Most of the approaches in Europe and other countries are still quite very centered on companies, technological development, where also administration do not yet fully integrate the holistic and systemic vision yet necessary if you really want a paradigm shift. The issue of actors' responsibility is also at the heart of this paradigm. As Peace Nobel Prize Amartya Sen wrote, who invites us to have a vision of mankind not as patients, whose interests have to be looked after, but as agents who can do effective things, both individually and jointly, responsible for the internal and external changes of our societies. The question of the responsibility and responsabilization of all actors in all scales is thus also, from my perspective, a major development on the path to this paradigm shift that the circular economy can represent. However, after being all of us for such a long time in such culture and system thinking, sometimes, slightly for our modern societies, might have some difficulties in fully being able to imagine what could be alternatives, innovations, in the framework of having holistic, circular, and complex way of thinking. Little research exists on how alternative understandings of sustainability and societal well-being, such as those developed by local, traditional, and indigenous population, can enrich and possibly challenge dominant visions of sustainability anchored in Western discourses. Maurizio Iacarina was also saying at that conference at the UNESCO that traditional knowledge does not divide observations into different disciplines to the same extent as Western science, and this more synthetic and holistic approach may help to develop new paradigms for the observation and study of complex phenomena. The understanding of complex systems remains a major challenge for the future. As modern science is reaching, in a way, its limits when attempting to explain the inner working of the world around us, maybe we should perhaps remember and re-evaluate the contribution of other cultures to the understanding of nature, as the Renaissance scientists did with the ancient knowledge of the Greek and Arab scholars. Long discredited, considered sometimes obsolete or even ridiculous, the international community is realizing more and more how much on those global issues the inherently holistic approach of local, traditional, and indigenous people make possible to respond to issues on which we have been advancing slowly for decades. The latest IPBES report on biodiversity highlights the very important contribution and interest of local, traditional, and indigenous knowledge for biodiversity. Traditional ecological knowledge and practices have been so successful that although indigenous lands represent less than 20% of the world's land area, their traditional territories are home to around 80% of the world's biodiversity. This has led to a growing appreciation at the international level of the value of traditional ecological knowledge in promoting sustainable land management and scientific discoveries, and in providing environmental data to support climate adaptation strategy. I remember, in particular, a meeting here of a working group of the Arctic Council when Finland had the presidency of the Arctic Council, and I was representing France there. And we participated in a working group around circular economy. And one of the representatives of indigenous peoples explained that actually the concept of circular economy was in practice in their communities forever, more like a way of life than a specific regulation. So what if we would try to apply these worldviews to our economy? I quite like this image taken by Walter Stahel to illustrate the economy, with a linear economy which is like a river transforming natural resources into basic materials and products for sale, while circular economy will be more like a lake, an ecosystem with a holistic approach, where every system inside that ecosystem lives and their works in symbiosis, with the others, and where all internal, external systems are connected. There is not a unique flow like a river, but inside-outside processes that allow the system to remain in balance while integrating internal and external changes and transformations, with processes promoting resilience, reciprocity, and respect between, in particular, people and nature, for a restorative and regenerative economy and ecosystem by design, and which ultimately help countries, cities, and businesses to reinvent what is progress. So what about GDP, growth, indicators? Well, Stahel is suggesting that societal and economical wealth and well-being actually should be maybe measured in stock instead of flow, in capital instead of sales. And then the term growth corresponds to a rise in the quality and the quantity of all stocks, natural but also cultural, human, and of course, within the society, manufactured. Edgar Morin recently said that complexity is a challenge to the knowledge, and especially to our disjunctive, reductive, and linear way of knowing, while it requires a connective, integrative, and dialogic way of knowing. Circular cooperation is a dynamic of reconciliation that embodies and brings to life complexity as the complexus. A way to build a resilient society might be in learning from other systems. Circular economy and cooperation could be one of the tools from local to global and global to local, from all disciplines and sectors, trying to acknowledge reciprocity and responsabilization, welcoming the other system like they are, and co-creating a joint future of possibilities. As Claude Lévi-Strauss stated, there is no primitive nor advanced civilization. There are just and only different answers to fundamental and identical issues. Following this idea, it is important to observe that transformation and resilience are becoming concrete through real experimentation and not only theories. Dialogue with interdisciplinary, intersectorial, intercultural actors involved in a specific challenge is essential with this intention for this dialogue to implement the principle of circular cooperation. Birth was also saying that ways of knowing and ways of doing things mark traditional knowledge as a process as opposed to knowledge as a content. This is also what Lévi-Strauss work called the science du concret, and the native knowledge of the natural milieu firmly rooted in the reality of an accumulation of concrete personal experiences as opposed sometimes to book learning. We will probably know more with Kari about Sitra's and Finland's both strategy and concrete implementations, but this is, in a way, definitely also a very interesting inspiration of how circular economy could be seen precisely, holistic, based on the empowerment of the actors from different sectors and the investment in human resources, while Sitra has funded in 2017 €4 million for circular economy education throughout the Finnish education system, with also cooperation, dialogue at the heart of all projects. Thus, holistic approaches and circular principles can reconcile, rebuild links and relationships within our complex and interconnected systems, including our societies. In particular, again, connecting sustainability science to circular economy with that interdisciplinary, intersectorial, and intercultural approach, using the concept of circular cooperation may allow systems and societies to move them from a linear to a circular economy, but with a broader and more inclusive view towards a resilient society. And in that perspective, I would say that local, traditional, and indigenous knowledge may be a great inspiration for Western societies to acknowledge the principles of reciprocity and responsabilization between human and all their environments, and acknowledge that we need a culture shift that embrace and respect all approaches. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mathieu, for this insightful talk. And now I'm very glad to welcome Johanna Kohl, Director for Circular Bioeconomy Research Program at the Natural Resource Institute.
Thank you very much for asking me to moderate this panel. So, yes, Johanna Kohl, Natural Resources Institute, Finland, and so good afternoon, Ambassador of France, Minister of Environment, and ladies and gentlemen. It's really nice to host you, and hopefully we have vivid discussion. And it is so timely, the circular bioeconomy, and I think that more than ever, when we come to the security of supply or the green transition, we have to think about circular economy as an enabler. We try to optimize the material cycles. We try to invent how we utilize all the main and side streams efficiently, or what is the big transition in energy systems and such. So this is really, I hope that we get more about this. Actually, you mentioned Plato. I must say that I was also thinking that once a quote I hope from him is that he said that, "Don't confuse me with facts, I try to think."
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think what we really need is also to rethink things. So it's about actually the 9 R's, maybe you are aware of those. So rethink, reduce, reuse, repair, refurbish, remanufacture, repurpose, recycle, and recover. So hopefully you bring us answers to these, dear panelists, at least some of those, so what kind of aspects you have in these. We will organize the panel in 2 sessions. It's about circular, so we circulate the people a bit. We start with more the global aspects, and then we go to the regional and come back to the global. There were not enough place for the stage, so that's the real version of why we set it in 2 sections. But please, welcome first now to the panel discussion part 1. Kari, the Director of Circular Economy for Biodiversity from Sitra. Biodiversity, okay. And then Susanna Lehvävirta, Research Director of Helsus, and Anna-Kaisa, Sustainability Manager, Saint-Gobain, Finland. So maybe you come here and then you have maybe you have a couple of slides. If you have them, you will help from here. And please, yes. And Kari, maybe go first.
I did a nice circle here.
Okay.
So it might be easier to speak from here.
Okay.
Just continue from there. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and time flies. I remember that 4 years back when we had the event, Finland-France Circular Economy event, and of course, nobody of course knew about how much life has changed in these 4 years time, and especially in the last 2 years time. But anyway, it's good that we are back again and meeting live here and have a hybrid event as well. I would say that what you, Matthew, mentioned about the holistic approach, that certainly what Sitra is trying to achieve. At the moment, we are working with sustainability solutions as a big theme, and try to connect climate and biodiversity and overuse of natural resources. And circular economy certainly is in the core of the solutions part of that challenge. And we have, of course, been active also in the European level, in the European stakeholder platform for circular economy, invited France as well, and try to see that in the European level things are moving as well. And naturally, like Minister Kari also mentioned about the Russians attacking Ukraine, the kind of dependency on oil and gas and the green transition certainly is most likely speeding up due to natural reasons. But from the circular economy point of view, of course, we are in the beginning of the path. I think it's circular economy study that states that 8.6% of the resources that we have in the society is really circled back. So we are still losing a lot of materials, and certainly it's also a business opportunity to kind of make it right. And what we are lacking still, not only in Europe, but outside of Europe we have, of course, Green Deal, and that gives a kind of good benchmark and starting point for many countries. But globally we don't have a shared vision of circular economy and how to go forward, and there's a big challenges also here in Europe as well. From Sitra side, when I came to Sitra, I came to establish the area in 2015. The main goal was to mainstream circular economy thinking in Finland, and we started by making a national roadmap for circular economy for Finland, and also, like Matthew mentioned, a strong focus on education, for example, and try to make it like integrated in different curriculums, and so that is not a silo topic, but really integrated in everyday life, I would say. And I think that's going quite nicely forward. There is like 6th and 9th grade students, for example, I think 80% goes through different kind of training in circular economy, and Finland has a highest number of courses in higher education in circular economy, etc. So that's an important part of the kind of competence building and really the backbone of the society for circular economy. We have also, as a thing to connect and also provided some studies, and in fact 4 years ago we did the connection between climate and circular economy and calculated with material economics that by making already 4 materials circular, plastic, aluminum, steel and cement, we could reduce the heavy industry emissions in Europe by 56%. And these kind of studies have been following up, and that's of course important in the future that it will be in the practice as well. Yesterday we launched another study, the connection between circular economy and biodiversity, and it was covered in Helsingin Sanomat in digital version yesterday, and this morning also in the print version. So if you are interested in the study results, I think that's a good place to look for kind of information. Of course the study itself is a good one as well. But the main idea there is that that through, for example, food and agriculture redesign and really how we are making the products so that they last and that we keep the value of the materials in the society longer, we don't have to extract so many natural resources, and there is more room for nature to thrive. And the study is called the Tackling Root Causes, Halting Biodiversity Loss Through the Circular Economy, and it focuses on the food and agriculture sector, construction, textile and forest sectors, and really it shows that through these 4 sectors and with the proposed measures we can help biodiversity loss, even if no other actions are taken. So in that sense it is a promising result, but of course it needs more investigations in different countries as well. And the other thing is that the world's biodiversity could recover to 2000 level by 2035 with these circular economy measures. So this is an example of also how circular economy is really a concrete tool to be a kind of a solution for sustainability crisis. I have been talking about the economy and ecological point of view, but we have also worked with social aspects and tried to make sure that not only the education sector is booming in Finland, but also to understand just transition mechanism and how the transition is fair. But from our side, it's been more about recently the vocational training as well, and making sure that those who are not studying in elementary schools and high schools, etc., also have a possibility to change the competencies that they have. From the international perspective, World Circular Economy Forum is the landmark study that we created with our international partners. It was hosted the first time in 2017 here in Helsinki. It has been in Japan, in Canada, and this year it will be in Africa, in Rwanda, Kigali. And certainly it is a timely topic as well to kind of bring the African continent and different global partners together kind of from the South perspective as well. What else could I say? I think maybe from the national point of view, also already the minister mentioned that there's the new strategic program for circular economy, and I think the minister has mentioned that there's the target to cap the use of natural resources in domestic use is an ambitious goal, and it's very interesting to see how that will play out and what will be the concrete actions. But in a country with rich of natural resources, I think it's very, very ambitious and also timely to take that kind of target. But happy to continue with the panel. Thank you very much.
Please. Thank you. So to get it more in a panel form a bit, I would like to ask you, so what do you think is the major challenge to boost the circular bioeconomy, either globally or locally? So what kind of ideas, a couple of ideas?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the challenges that to boost circular bioeconomy or circular economic process as a whole is the kind of I think we are still thinking in a linear fashion. It was fascinating what you kind of covered so broadly. I never thought about it from that wide perspective of thinking that how the systems are kind of very rigid and in many ways I think we can even understand how we are kind of living in the systems that we should actually try to really reinvent the system. And but at the same time, in order to make progress, you need to somehow try to boost things as we are in this system. So how to match these kind of big things and innovation, but still do some kind of progress right now. I think that's maybe the fundamental challenge that we are facing.
Okay, thanks a lot. Maybe Susanna, do you have answers maybe for that? At least you got a challenge from Kari there, but so shortly if you have now, and then I give floor to you to continue.
Maybe I have some comments actually in my presentation.
Please come here, Susanna Leimavirta, and you are the research director of the Helsinki Institute of Sustainability Science, and maybe something about that perspective and more, please.
Yes, thank you. So how do we work with the slides? Okay, good, thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. I hope you are still awake. It's a lot of information and it's of course a bit heavy stuff, but I try to be now more practical because now we have a very solid theoretical basis for everything, so I'm trying to avoid repeating that and give some quite personal experiences. So my background is that of a scientist, and I started at the beginning of this year as the director of the Helsinki Sustainability Science Institute. So I have 2 rucksacks in my back. So I created 2 slides for you, only 2 slides, with some arguments like I argue, I want to state that. Like Matthew already said, solutions are needed at all levels and sectors of the society. And there should be no one in our society and no organization who would think that it doesn't concern me. Circular economy doesn't concern me. And that brings us to the second bullet point, because what I see in practice when I try to work as a sustainability scientist, I see a lot of neglect. I see a lot of values that are actually against circular economy. So what we need is a reconceptualization of what is good,
or what is attractive, or wanted, or sensible, or doable. Because what I see often is like when research brings good results about how something could be done based on circular economy, then up comes some powerful people who say, oh, but recycled materials are crap. They won't last, we don't want them. So there's a lot of suspicion or beliefs concerning recycled materials, upcycled materials, reused materials, and so forth. So I think that is the most tricky bullet point to fight, to solve. But luckily, the lowest bullet point already brings some light also, because we see a lot of emerging, innovative companies, actors, who base their actions completely on circular economy. And I just pulled up a couple of examples that I'm personally aware of, like architects who claim that the most sustainable building is the one that stays, that is continued to be used in different ways, that is never demolished. So, and when I walk around in Helsinki, for example, I see a lot of demolition, and I see that we are still far from circular economy. So something needs to be done, but there are these seeds of hope already. And there's also like ordinary people's movements, like the one that if you Google for visible mending, you find fantastic like fashion ideas about how to repair your clothes. Or then there are these waste food restaurant initiatives or zero waste food restaurants and all kinds of other projects. These are just a couple to mention. But yes, please, the next one. So what we actually need to overcome all these suspicions is all kinds of agreements at the global level, at the regional level, national level, and even local levels. Because regulation, policies, and governance express our common goals and values at the bottom, at the end. So, and then often people wish for, something gentle, like if we just create this nice agreement that it would be like a guideline, that it would be nice to have these, for example, municipal or national or international solutions. That may not lead anywhere. I argue, based on my many personal own experiences in science and elsewhere, that we need forcing, coercive regulation, at least to some point. Otherwise, nothing will happen. There's not enough goodwill only to rely on that. And what we also need is systems thinking for all. You very well covered that already in your talk, so I'm not going to go very much into that, but I would like to see systems thinking start from primary school, so that we are educated from the very beginning of our lives to see interconnections and complexity of systems. Only that way it can be really rooted into our thinking. And also, capacity building is needed to foresee risks and possible unwanted impacts. So I argue also that reuse or recycling or circular economy per se may not save the world. It has to be done in a sustainable way. So even recycled products can be harmful or wasteful or toxic if they are done in the wrong way or used in the wrong way. So even there, we need to do a lot of work to bring different kinds of experts together so that they can look at, for example, how to recycle plastics or how to build nature-based solutions, for example, based on recycled materials, so that they are done in the way that it's non-toxic and it doesn't really release surprise pollutants into the environment, for example. So, and maybe one of the most tricky things related to all what I already said is the bottom lines there, that we are heavily dependent on what we now have, our infrastructure, our way of living, our way of understanding how things work or should work. So I think we should also create capacities for freedom of thinking, develop our imaginative capacities so that we could think and imagine of futures that don't yet exist, that might be dramatically different from where we are now. And only that way can we get to sustainable circular economies, if we can do that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I have actually two questions for you, because I was also thinking that, first of all, that how do you lose then the chains when it comes to the prejudice and suspicious? Is it only legislation or what is it? But the second one, where you kind of stopped, is the future. So how does it then look, 2030, the future, the circular economy as part of it?
Okay. The first one is, of course, does this work?
It looks like that. Okay. So the first one is, of course, the very tricky one. But I think that the only way is to work together. So wherever something is planned or produced or constructed or created, we should collect different kinds of people together, from the company life, from the policy sector, from research, a wide collection of research from humanities who can reflect on people's perspectives and behaviors, but also maybe from natural sciences and jurisprudence and all different kinds of disciplines to discuss together and spend time in doing that, because only that way we build common understanding and trust, because trust is what we need here. So, and then the second one, where are we 2030? It's a short notice. So I'm afraid we are not very much in a different situation yet, but maybe we could be reaching a tipping point where we are at the brink of the transition. So maybe we could have a society where there is good legislation, good global agreements to support all kinds of working modes and production modes, where we accelerate local circular economies and avoid global transportations, because that's also what's been shown by research, that transport is a great disturbance to the globe. So that should be also avoided and could be nicely done in circular economy. So maybe we are almost there.
Almost there. Sounds like a lie. That's good. Good. Thanks for that. If any of you have a short reflection before I give floor to Anne, but just shortly, if you have some.
Yeah, just bringing some complementary insight into what Susanna just shared, and also Kari. Indeed, I think that what I wanted to highlight also is coming from the theory to the concrete is key, and you were talking about trust and dialogue, and you were highlighting time. And I think this is crucial, because to build trust, those connections, to rebuild, reconciliate people and entities, it needs time. And this time should be put into experimentation, having dialogue, going together, visiting, experimenting things together. And this is where you're building common knowledge. And this is where it becomes interesting, and it changed the systems. The other point I wanted also to mention in connection with that is, so of course education, I think both of you mentioned that. I think this is key in it. whether this is for circularity or circular economy or for system thinking. Of course, this is key. So maybe it will take, of course, there's tipping points, but maybe it will take a generation, I will say. Even if the generation already to come has different way of thinking, of course. But I wanted also, coming back to the education, I remember, I don't know if this is the same here, but when we were first thinking, when I was a kid at school, speaking about sustainable development, I don't know, well, the scheme already exists, like this scheme with the 3 circles of economy, environment, and social, and they were highlighting, and by the definition of sustainable development, being like the intersection of the 3. But for me, this is a very exclusive definition, because then, if you are not part of this intersection, what it means? You are not part of the movement trying to go into sustainable development. So I think we really need in that dialogue, and this is what you highlighted both, to have an inclusive approach, like having everybody on the same discussion, even the ones that you think that maybe they are not so sustainable, but you can't do without them because they are part of the system. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. And, I think we come back to that, but then now Anna-Kaisa, you are the sustainability manager at FRANCO-Finland Finland, and I think you will bring us something about the climate circularity and well-being.
Yes, thank you. So I have my presentation somewhere there. So thank you for being here, Your Excellency and Minister Kari online. And I'm pretty sure that I will crash everybody down to very practical life what comes to the company. So just talking very quickly, let's see if it works like that, about Saint-Gobain, a French company. So we have mentioned here the global and the local. So we are global construction material manufacturer, but we are also very local. Actually 98% of all the materials in tons we sell in Finland, so they are produced in Finland. Construction is local and transportation kills you if you start to do that. But that was the point that I wanted you to take from this slide with you. And this is something that I'm not going into it, but we are very much the problem and also the solution, the built environment and the resources and everything. But what we need to build still, it has to be done with less carbon and in more resource-wise way. And this is like somebody asked me, what are you actually doing for your work? So I think that I'm working with the 3 things. First is carbon, second one is resources and circularity, and third part is this, whatever is there in the built environment for human beings. So circular economy, and I said that the loved child has many names. It can be recycling, it's reusing, it's everything in there. So of course I come from the material side, so we are very keen on materials, recycling, reusing the materials. But if you use the resources, natural resources wise, we recycle the most we can, we are actually lowering the carbon impact of our operations and of our products and of the buildings. And whenever you have we are talking about the materials and combinations of materials, for example, in buildings. So if there are no hazardous substances, they are much more easier to recycle at the end of their life. And actually the most sustainable building, I have to tell, is the building that was never built. So that's really the key in the built environment, that if we have a building, so the longer the life cycle is, better it is. And I see there are many designers, architects trying to do that. There are hundreds of means how to do it, but I'm not going into those either. And this is just a reminder. Saint-Gobain, we have committed to the carbon neutrality, net zero carbon, 2050 globally. In Finland, I was actually blackmailed or threatened to give the promise that we will aim for the 2035. And this is something where we really need to work. We have a carbon roadmap. It's like 175 single rows in an Excel sheet. All of those are single actions, big and small. But we are not there yet, but we look forward the society to move with us. And just an example now, yes, I remember. So yesterday there was a press release from Saint-Gobain Group that there was the first ever in the world net zero carbon, scope 1, scope 2, glass factory opened in France. So it's made with the renewable energy and it's made with 100% recycled glass cullet. But it exists now. But we are not there yet in Finland, but I hope that very soon we will have this kind of investments. But here, just to mention that we know very well where are our climate impacts, and I say that I'm not talking about climate impacts without the circularity or the recycling and any other that is there, but the raw materials are our headache. The very big part of our emissions comes from the raw materials, and we are actually doing many things. So we use a lot of the recycled glass cullet. We are the biggest user in Finland, and we are taking back the waste from the job sites. And actually I'm working hard in a process called Wool to Loop, you will see it soon, that how to divert the mineral wools in the construction and demolition waste back to the alternative binders for that one very emission intensive cement, for example, to find alternatives for that. But anyway, I can say that even if the cement has a huge impact, so the cement industry is doing great work. And I'm pretty sure that there are nice results coming soon. The gypsum, we recycle that in Finland, so I guess last year it was 16,000 tons. We get back from the construction and demolition, and actually the one gypsum board, it already contains 20% of recycled gypsum. It can be increased, and actually I would say that many times somebody tells us something is really circular. I would say that hardly the gypsum board is the only actually circular product we have. So it has a closed loop, it comes back to us. And as a global scale, Saint-Gobain, I guess last year we had like 10 million tons of natural resources replaced with something else. And that's a pretty big amount, but I see that all over the world the impact can be increased a lot. And when we come to this, let's say the dry products we have, so anything like the dry concrete and whatever, we are looking there for alternative for the sand and alternative binders to replace the different cements we have. And that is very interesting world. And you might ask me after, I'm not telling my thought yet here, I hope that you address my thoughts here. But anyway, it's a very complicated world, but very interesting. And of course, so it's a lot about the materials and recycling, but anyway, we are not giving up to find the solutions. So, and I mentioned the Wool to Loop. This is our happy team, so talking about the ecosystems. So we have 14 partners from 9 different countries and have been now living with the project 4 years. So it's a beautiful example of ecosystem and cross-scientific work and whatever, there's the industry, academia, whatever. But anyway, I'm pretty happy also that the project ends in 6 months, hopefully. Next year at this point we have done all the reporting and we are done. And the Biobond, that's another ecosystem for innovations, and FRANCE Finland is a part. But this is needed too. And then this is just about what could be the obstacles in the built environment. So we have a lot of materials. Are we using always the virgin ones? Or should we have the thinking about that? What fits for the purpose? That is a big change of mind, what we can do. And then of course the standardization, approval, and this kind of things in the buildings are pretty complex to solve. And I hope that the construction products regulation will have the circularity embedded in sooner than later. So, and of course, you can always think about the cat and the octopus. And just an example, nothing comes for free. You have to invest. You have to invest. You have to have the knowledge in the companies, organizations. That is the first circular economy engineer in my team, Tuomas. So he has been there now 1.5 years. And soon, I can tell just between us, I'm going to have a climate impact engineer in my team as well. So, but that's just the point that we are really taking this thing that it's not like consultant or anybody else who does it for us. And talking about the complexity, so the circular economy is there as well, but I'm sure the Raku, who was drawing this picture about our carbon roadmap, as I could tell it, or it can be the circular roadmap as well. she got a pretty headache if we start to see the complexity of 3 different business activities and everything else outside of us. But I'm very proud of that picture, and it's like Alice in the Wonderland, you'll find always something new there. So, thank you.
Thanks a lot. And, hopefully, I guess you're what you were expecting me to ask, but at least we were talking about the collaboration, the Europe-Finland-France collaboration, and what could be then the major potentials or challenges, and how would you maybe accelerate the collaboration? So, please.
No, of course, we are a French company, we are having tight connection with the Kari team and so. And of course, there's a lot of, I'm sure that after this event, I will be contacted by some French academia people that would like to join some project with us or something. And I see that actually the collaboration between, on the European level, it comes really a lot. What is now the public funding, Green Deal. Saint-Gobain is very active there. We are actually looking for the projects and partners to fit in our action plan. And I don't know, I'm going at the end of June to Grenoble, is this INTEC conference, and I'm there as a Waterloo project manager, and I'm pretty sure that there will be a lot of new ideas coming, and that will be really the showcase, the potential.
Okay, thank you. And then you have the Alice in Wonderland picture there, so I was just wondering that, is there something that you really prioritize in that picture when it comes now to the world situation where we are at the moment?
Of course, the local purchasing, and that is something we have been living now since COVID-19, that you really see the impact on the global supply chain. So the thinking has changed in our company as well, so that's one thing, the local sourcing. Second thing is really to understand well where is the biggest impact, and to invest and work to tackle those things. And what you didn't ask me, but what I was thinking, so about ecosystems and the complexity, and what I really would like us to prioritize as a company is that it's not only to collaborate in ecosystems, but it's really a challenge for the organizations internally. You cannot purchase in a traditional way, you cannot do the R&D in traditional way. You have to have a collaboration with your customers, with your suppliers, and when you are discovering something new, so you really have to prioritize the internal learning and the adaptation. So.
Thanks a lot, yeah. I think we take now the opportunity for you. If you have any questions or any comments, and then we kind of circulate the people. So if any comments or reflections? Yeah, please. Can you maybe? Yeah.
Thank you for wonderful presentation. And I have a question about the construction and the planning tools, because a lot of waste comes exactly from the over supply of construction material for the building site. So what kind of planning tools are you utilizing?
No, well, I know that actually we have, of course, our internal systems and what we deliver and what is like produced and so. But at this point, I would actually ask the customer who is ordering. And of course, if you build something, you have tight timetables. And you have to be sure that you have the materials in place in the right time. But I would say that the companies are aiming to reduce, and we have our internal planning tools in a way that we can even give some customized sets of materials right in time, in the right place, even by the floors in the buildings. And those are maybe even custom cut or tailor cut materials, and that's one thing we can do. But of course, the purchasing field is so fragmented. You have the small contractor, the big contractor, you have everything there in between. So it's pretty hard to have a unified picture of that. And there are companies like Netec, who is actually taking back the job site waste, and they are actually gathering really valuable data. How many percentage too much do the contractors purchase to the job site? So, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Yes, thanks a lot. And now, short applause, and then we now to have the more kind of regional aspects and then policy and back to the global. Please, first, Mira Jarkko, project manager, and you are from the city of Helsinki. Please take a seat first, and then we have a common presentation from Saara Alakorva and Teemu Loikkanen, who are researchers from the University of Lapland. And then after that, Pekka Skautto, who is director of the Sustainable Circular Economy from the Finnish Environment Institute, Syke. And I guess, Matthew, you will then maybe come back also with the global part. So we didn't even need you always. We need you. But first, Mira Jarkko is from the
Thank you. I'm afraid I have too many slides here, so I have to try to skip them a little bit. But I have to say, you asked the question about the tools, and just to add to Anna's answer is that there is, of course, the difference between if you demolish or if you do the new construction. For example, actually Lotus demolition has a very good new tool for calculating all the things, but then all the other contractors or those that are building have their own systems. So yeah, it really differs from the actor to another. But that is definitely a good question. What kind of tools they use?
Just to add, circularity is a lot about planning.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's exactly the thing that is missing right now.
Yeah, it's all about the data and the planning. I agree. And I'll tell just shortly about the path to circular economy in the city of Helsinki. And my name is Mira Jarkko. I work for the city of Helsinki as a project manager right now in a cluster program for circular economy. Yeah. As everybody else has been presenting, I have to do this too. So we will be Helsinki. The city of Helsinki will be a carbon neutral by 2030. This is a new target in our new city strategy. And we have also target of being carbon zero by 2040. And as somebody just mentioned, it's only 8 years till 2030, so it's very short time. And unfortunately, as the city grows, we all know that it definitely increases the use of virgin materials because of the new buildings, because of the demolition, which still keeps happening, even though it's not always the most wisest thing to do. But of course, unless we utilize the existing materials as efficiently as possible and to their fullest extent. I think that the only recycling is not an option, or it is a small option, but we have to take the next step, going a little bit forward in that section. We have to be able to reuse the materials. And for example, in construction, in construction sector, we have to be able to, someday we have to be able to use the concrete element as it is, or at least a little bit repair it and then use it again in another building or a warehouse or whatever, but not crush them all and put them into the ground. Even though that's a good thing when you then you don't have to use virgin materials like rocks or so, but still we have to go forward. And we all know that it's not very cheap thing to do, to reuse concrete elements. But if you think about the energy efficiency measures 15 years ago, everybody thought that it's too expensive as well. And so I truly believe that this will be the new energy efficiency measures, circular economy. They will not be as expensive as they are maybe today in a few years' time, because of the material is getting more expensive, for example. But fortunately, it's not for fact in every case. Like, for example, we've been doing this mass coordination and recycle of masses since 2014, and we've been able to save tens of millions of euros and a huge amount of CO2 emissions. And these kind of things we want to continue doing. We have also this roadmap for circular and sharing economy, which we did 2 years ago. And the themes in that roadmap is construction, procurement, green waste, and sharing economy. And I think, and these are just the ambitious goals for 2030, so we have to do a lot of different stuff to be in that state. And if you want to know a little bit more about the our roadmap, you can take a look at from the Circularity Watch. It's a real-time follow-up website for the actions of the roadmap. So we have around 30 actions there, and we have a separate page there for each action, and including scheduled tasks for concrete implementation. So this definitely increases the transparency of our actions, I think. But yeah. But then, because of the just shortly, because of the sector of the building sector is really a key issue in Helsinki, as we being a growing city. We established a year ago a cluster program for circular economy, and we are focusing on construction sector at this time. And the idea is that we want to create some business opportunities together in an ecosystem. And this is funded by the city. We have a 3 million euros budget for 3 years time, so we can really do something. We can do piloting experiments. We can do all sorts of cooperation projects. And of course, because the region is we have a high potential for supply and demand to meet, as it says over there. So we can make it happen in here, I believe. And this is something that was actually shown in Anna's presentation already, so I don't have to talk about this anymore. Let's go forward. So this is what we do. We do experiments, as I mentioned, innovation challenges, research, development and innovation co-development projects. And for example, in promoting circular design in construction, developing new materials, creating new processes, new models in demolition processes, and we very much try to rely on new data and getting the data as well. And
1 minute.
Yeah, this is something I want to show to you because this is this is a concrete action. One of our projects that we'll be doing now for a year already. So even though it's not, I don't think it's very wise thing to do to demolish 16 buildings at Lahtuniemi, but they are office buildings and they are extremely expensive to how do you say, if you
refurbish.
Yeah, refurbish into a residential buildings. Alterate to a residential buildings. So they will be demolished because the city is growing and it's still more wisely to build in a ground where it has been built already. So we don't have to do all the construction from the beginning. And because of that, we need to decrease, of course, the emissions. So we have to really develop the circularity and the circular economy in there. So we've been doing we've been doing a lot of cooperation with the companies that owns the buildings. We asked them to give a pre-demolition audits so we know what kind of materials they are eating, kind of the buildings, and how we could actually use it in a new building. Okay, but just shortly, that was one example of the projects that we're doing. And if you are interested more to hear some more, you can take a look from our website. But now, here. Yeah, that was too many slides. Sorry. Just a quick question still. How is your circular watch taken? So is it utilized quite a lot? This circularity watch or so? Yeah. So maybe like or something. Do you mean that does somebody? Is it utilized? How is it? People have found it.
Well, that's a good question because I'm not responsible for the circularity watch, so I don't actually know. I can't answer to that question. But I don't know. But it's a good tool even for the city workers. I mean, even we have 40,000 workers at the city, so we definitely don't know what we are doing. So it's a good transparency to all the citizens and to businesses and also to ourselves. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't answer that.
No, but it's just, because it was really interesting. I was just thinking that maybe it would be copy-paste somewhere else as well.
It has been actually, because we also had a climate watch, but now we don't have that anymore. But all the very many cities in Europe and now in North America are taking that tool also, and it's a startup which started. It was my colleague who started that a few years ago, and now she's having it and scaling it up.
Yeah, that sounds great. So thanks a lot. And now we move on to the Sami and circular economy, and Saara Alakorva and Teemu Loikkanen, you are researchers from the University of Lapland, and I was just reading about the permaculture and circular economy, so it's like going back to permaculture or something after I was just reading. So, but the floor is yours, please.
Thank you for your invitation, Your Excellency and Minister online. I'm Saara Alakorva, and I'm a PhD student and university teacher in the University of Lapland. My research field is in political science and Sami studies. And then I have been working lately in this project, Dialogies and Encounters in the Arctic. And in this project I have worked together with Teemu, and that's why we are here together. We have done research about the circular economy from the Sami perspective and from the perspective of reindeer herding. I have a background in I'm Sami scholar, I'm Sami myself, and I have a background in reindeer herding. I have grown up in reindeer herding, Sami reindeer herding community, and I have been herding reindeer myself too. And working in this project, I was producing a film about a traditional way of slaughtering reindeer. And I produced this together with Sami Museum Sweden, and this film will be part of the new exhibition opening next month. And museum wanted to record this tradition since it saw that this tradition is actually in danger to disappear. And it was a kind of peculiar moment for me to be behind the filming group, because in my childhood this tradition was everyday activity, meaning that this was the way reindeer were slaughtered, and us, the children, we used to take part to these activities. This was how we learned the skills, the knowledge, and also this is how we learned realities of life, circle of life. When we talk about circularity in Sami context, we usually refers to circularity in nature-based economies, just like reindeer herding. And as you know, reindeer herding is Sami livelihood and also lifestyle, where the role of human is to follow and take care of reindeer. Traditionally, Sami have used everything from the reindeer. Everything what is eatable has been used for food, and other materials like fur, horns, bones, nails, etc. have been used for clothes and other practical use items. And this have been, of course, a way of survive in the north, in the Arctic region. In the course of centuries, the Sami have developed skills and knowledge to make use of all these materials. And still today we have reached tuotsi tradition, handicraft tradition, what is based on this knowledge and these materials. As well as the Sami food culture is based on the multiple ways of making use of reindeer and other natural products. Even though reindeer herding is nowadays forced to follow the rules of market economy, it's still many ways also cultural lifestyle. You are not able to get rich herding reindeer. And you can say that Sami reindeer herders still value reindeer higher than money, and the lifestyle reindeer enables them. I suppose life quality, as you said. Obviously, there has been dramatic changes in reindeer herding, and because of various reasons, motorization, etc. But there was also big changes in reindeer herding when Finland joined the European Union, and the reindeer herding became once more regulated. Example, if before reindeer were slaughtered outside nearby reindeer herding fences in cold weather in winter time, now reindeer are slaughtered in the slaughterhouses far away, and herders are only able to sell meat from slaughtered in these slaughterhouses. This has also changed practices how reindeer are slaughtered. Slaughterhouses are designed from the perspective of effective meat production. This makes it difficult to otherwise make use of reindeer. it is difficult to get materials needed for the Sami handicrafts, and there are many eatable items wasted, like blood, which cannot be utilized through slaughterhouses. Sami are still slaughtering in traditional way when they slaughter reindeer for their own use. But is it enough to keep this tradition in living and knowledge how everything is used from reindeer and nothing is wasted? During the time Finland has been EU member, we have already lost local markets and consumers who know how to cook other parts of reindeer than just best part of the meat. New generations of locals are not familiar eating heart, liver or blood sausages. They would still like to buy a dried reindeer meat or smoked meat prepared in lavo. For my opinion, most sustainable building. Sami lavo tent, or how you say, TP, or I don't know how to describe it. It made almost impossible to sell these items because all these regulations. So now if we have to start thinking a new way how to use everything, example from reindeer, other parts than meat should be highly processed, so that it doesn't remind about the taste of the heart, liver or blood. Also processing consumes energy and it eats from the same land than reindeer. And now I give the floor to Jen.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, and thank you from my side also for inviting us here. And if Sarah is the insider in the reindeer herding, I'm the outsider, and my doctoral thesis will be about citizenship in circular economy. And now within this project, I joined Sarah to research these issues of circular economy and Sami lifestyle. And we have kind of developed our methodology in the interviews in a way that, well, she can ask the informed questions because she knows the business and the lifestyle and is from there. And on the other hand, I can ask the, in a way, dumb questions that maybe she couldn't even ask because it would be too obvious. So as Sarah was saying, we kind of argue that in these Sami nature-based economies, circularity is one of the key principles. And as we heard, the way reindeers are herded and it has changed significantly, as has other things as well. And in a way, if we look at it from that perspective, it seems a little bit like a paradox that first we have these EU regulations that make some of these circular practices, if not completely impossible, then it might in a way diminish them and make it harder. And now they are kind of bringing them back through different projects and new regulations, while in a way it could be also possible to think ways how we could maybe take out some of the regulations that prevent circularity, and that could be one way of having these circular practices refurbished or brought back in a way that it would be possible, and that this knowledge wouldn't, that it would still transfer to the next generation and to the next generation. And as Matthew was saying in his presentation, I think in many ways, in many cultures, we have lost these ways of thinking, and we think that maybe in the Sami culture there still are living ways and culture of different kind of thinking. So it would be very important not to let this tradition break. And of course, for example, this blood example is one of the good example about these regulations, that because if we think about circular economy, it seems that it's a unified regulation to all over Europe, but there are so many different ways of living within Europe and different climates, and some, if you are processing meat, for example, in southern France or in the Arctic, it's a completely different way. So also we could think about how to recognize these local practices in circular economy. And we were quite surprised that there is kind of a large research gap within these issues, that when the reindeer herding, for example, changed when Finland joined the European Union, there hasn't been much research about that, so it would be really needed. And these changes to practices at the local level, as I said, might endanger this transition of traditional knowledge to the next generation, so it would be very important to take note. So thank you.
Thanks a lot. That was, I think, really interesting. And if you would, or if you have the possibility to change some regulation part, where would you start? So, considering that what you were just telling, so the gap in understanding what you were just saying.
Well, our example was what we heard when we were interviewing was the regulation about the blood, that I would maybe ask the people working in reindeer herding how would they do it in a traditional way that would be hygienic, safe, but still that it would be possible for them to use different parts of the reindeers and to sell them without sending their reindeer somewhere in the southern Finland to slaughtering houses where this blood can be taken. So it could be done locally there in a way that they would have the control of their own business.
Is it working? Yeah. And easier they're selling these products like dried meat or smoked meat, because those needs doesn't need so big infrastructure, because you can smoke it in the labu or you dry meat in the air in the springtime sun. So because those cannot be sold at all, but people are interested to buy. These are the items people are really interested to, but you cannot really sell those.
Yeah, and then that way it would be sustainable, because these don't use so much energy than if you build a big plant to process them, instead of using the things that they already have there and the things that they already know how to do it. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I think that was really great to hear all this, and maybe we are kind of ambassadors of this knowledge also from our perspective then later on when it comes to the circular economy. Thanks a lot, and now back to the big picture, I think. Petros Kauto, you are the director of the Sustainable Circular Economy from Syke, and you have the policy and markets, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you, Johanna, and Excellencies, colleagues, friends. And thanks for everyone for very, very interesting presentations. I'm Petros Kauto from Finnish Environment Institute, director for our program for Sustainable Circular Economy. And our strategic goal is to advance the transition to a sustainable circular economy and bioeconomy. And I will now highlight some maybe 3 key areas that we are currently doing to implement this aim. First one is practical and related to what our minister said. The government adopted last year a strategic program to promote the circular economy, and it has quite ambitious goals. But also it should have, as you can see from the figure, Finland is actually one of the European countries with the highest material consumption currently. So our aim is to change this, and what Finnish Environment Institute is doing in this area currently. I will give you two examples of our work. First one is that we are modeling the material flows in close collaboration with other research institutes such as Luke, and based on this modeling, we are the aim is to build scenarios and to understand which measures would be most effective in order to achieve circularity and to reduce resource use. What kind of impacts these measures would have on environment and the economy. And based on these scenarios, the aim of government is then to agree on voluntary agreements with companies, municipalities. Then the second thing we are doing in this area is that we are currently building up a national network to bring together all the expertise in this area to kind of share the best practices that we have already adopted in Finland and also in Europe. And the aim is to start this collaboration in autumn. And now we are organizing workshops with companies, municipalities to gather all the ideas for this work. Then the second area of our current work in this area is related to regulation. It was mentioned that already here today that the European Commission has adopted this Circular Economy Action Plan a couple of years ago and proposed more than 30 new measures to promote circularity in Europe. That in addition to that, then we of course have lots of national aims to renew our regulations that has been constructed mainly to promote safety and functioning of linear economy. So there's a lot to do, but it also means that we need to assess these new regulations, both ex ante and ex post, and to understand that all that is called circular is perhaps not sustainable. We need sustainability assessments, and of course, as we are adopting so many new regulations and other policy measures, we need to take care of the policy coherence of these issues to try to have incentives that are in line with each other. And third important point here is that we should create regulatory environment that is not causing too heavy regulatory burden by, for example, knowledge production requirements for small and innovative companies. And here we have two examples of this work. First one published last year analyze the circular economy and or the product policy measures proposed by the Commission. Then the second one is related to what Mira especially brought up, question about data and how it can help us to promote circular economy. And in that one we have mapped the current ideas and in this area and what kind of governance environment there is, which is quite complicated because we have lots of going on in circularity area, but also in this digital and data-driven policy area. And finally, third kind of main area of our work is research, which is of course kind of basis for all of our work. I will give you 3 examples of this. First one is related to need to understand how we create markets and how the economization happens, and in that sense we should understand this more holistically as a process of valuation, public policy measures and reformulating markets. The second one relates to what was I think mentioned already here, that we should assess and understand much better social impacts of circular economy, not only the economic ones and environmental ones. And finally, Kari already mentioned the work Sitra is doing to understand circular economy impact on biodiversity, and we are taking part in that work. And here I have an example of one of the, I guess, first publications that have been done in this field to understand what kind of effects circularity can have on biodiversity. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Petrus. I was thinking, what about the collaboration with the Europeans in the future? And if you have any specific kind of greetings for our France audience here, what kind of collaboration, and if you consider what you have been doing in Syke and other Finnish organizations, research organizations, and what kind of collaboration we could have more?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that the question of security of supply is perhaps the most important one, and it of course is also kind of issue that will probably enhance circularity itself. But for me as a policy scientist, I think that the most interesting field of collaboration between Finland and France is that France has been kind of regulatory sandbox for circular economy measures, and which is very good and very interesting. But what is needed perhaps is that we should have more studies and policy appraisals of how these different measures that you have adopted in France, what kind of effects they really have had, so we can learn and then modify the policy measures that have been adopted. For example, well, in France, for example, so-called eco-modulation has been done for years, and now the rest of the Europe is adopting it, and would be very interesting to learn from French experience.
Yes, thanks a lot. I think now, I don't know, Matthew, if you have still a kind of any presentation of your own, but maybe your reflection, what you have heard now, would be great to hear, and then we open maybe for all of you as well, and if you have any short reflection, but keep it short, 1, 2, 3, or whatever you have.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you all indeed for your very interesting presentations. I think that actually what when we were learning and listening to this panel is actually very secular, and around secularity we had very different perspectives, from local to global, from different disciplines, from different actually also backgrounds regarding those disciplines. And this is what it makes also, and we can see that, the discussion and the dialogue very interesting. For me, I will say that from the different perspective I've heard, I feel that we can see actually circularity not only in the economy but everywhere actually. You can see the circularity on the traditions. You can see circularity beyond circular economy. I mean, on the city, on very different topics. On a company, you were highlighting also, and we were just exchanging that within an organization, within the company actually, you could have also like circular dynamics. And for me, this is what could be the most important, like in going from circular economy. There's a lot of economists actually that disconnect the economy from the society. I will say, well, why not? But economy is like part or fully connected to society. This is one of the infinity of possibilities within the society. So for me, circularity is a bit like that, meaning if we can see how actually our systems, all the systems, you take a city, you take an organization, you take a country, you take a collaboration between countries, you take Europe with a regulation, if you can see that actually there is cycles within that when you take a decision, there will be feedback loops actually that will come back to you, maybe in a way that you won't understand at the moment when you're taking the decision. So what is important is, as you just said, like following those cycles and being aware that if we continue observing, studying the effects, then we can readjust actually the decisions or the studies so that actually we are on an ongoing process which is circular. And this is the same with our own system. When you take the system of a human being, you can observe many circularity, many cycles also, which is also a cycle of increasing information on yourself. So I will say that this is for me the main challenge from what I've heard, and I will say maybe the commonality, that we can observe circularity everywhere in all the topics, in all the systems, and not only connected to circular economy, but when you see that, then you can go into actually seeing the interconnectivity of all the systems, and you can support that. And this is where we were discussing, Susanna, I think, left. Then we can think about what we could do in 10 years from now, because we observe the systems, we observe what could be the circularity, and we support them through an integrative and inclusive process.
Yes, thanks a lot. I think it's also scaling the circular, what kind of scale of the circles, that's really one point. Also the time scale matters, so that's also one thing.
And sometimes,
Absolutely, and the scale of time, the scale of space, like we've seen from local to global, from global to local to global, but in a way this is also fragmented to have this kind of approach, but we need that also fragmentation. This is really something that I wanted also to add from my first presentation. It's not about like determinism against complexity. We need both. We need both. And from the determinism and the fragmentation, we had and we will still have a lot of information that we need in our systems. But this is not the only one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Now, if you have any comment or question in the audience now, please, anyone. Or are you already kind of circular enough? Please, then.
Thank you, panelists.
this. It's been a very interesting afternoon. A lot of questions, but I think the most pressing thing right now is when it comes to the issue of migrants. As you know, the situation in this part of the world has affected movement of people. And of course, Finland and France is a very interesting place for people to come. My question is more of how do you commute or inform the migrant community about circular economy? Because there might be, it's a new concept to a lot of people, and how do you make it interesting for them to be buy in on that? So that's my question.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think that could be a seminar, then follow-up seminar. But would it be, Mira, what do you think? What has been done in Helsinki, or if not done yet? So, what could be one action?
Goodness, good question. This goes way beyond my topics, which I know. So you were asking the migrants. So how do we influence, take them into our society, and or
how do you inform them about this?
Inform about circularity? Well, I think that maybe I have definitely that there is no one answer to that, but I think that it should be done through their, where they live, where will like through the normal life, what sort of actions that in Finland we have to do in order to, how do we share spaces, how do we share vehicles, how do we sort our waste? It just, start with the normal lifestyle, and then maybe after that, to the workplaces, take it to the workplaces, and they can learn it from that as well. But that's my answer.
Yeah. So circular ways, everyday life, I think. But I think that would be a good, really like a seminar. Also,
interesting point, definitely, and very important one.
Yes, that was great. And I think that would be now great to kind of stop here, and we created also the follow-up seminar, I think. So thanks for my part as well, and thanks a lot. Thanks.